Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're listening to Outsized Returns. I'm your host, Samuel Austin Taylor, Sam T, Sir Sam T on all the social media platforms. I'm excited today because, I have a good friend and a brother who's joined the podcast, and his story is really unique, coming from the early days of being or seeing an entrepreneur put in the blood, sweat, and tears to becoming one of the most prestigious dermatologists all across the Houston area and really the entire country, to becoming a full-time lawyer, just starting his own entrepreneurial journey. And so today I want to welcome Justin Moore, founder of Holly Hall Supply Company. And we want to get into his story, why he started this business, and take us through the genesis of, becoming a full-time entrepreneur. So welcome, Justin, to Outsized Returns.
Hey, thanks for having me. What's up,
Yeah.
everybody?
Yeah. So, dude, my first, let's just put the B skit
Let's
on
do it.
the
Let's
right
get in it.
now.
Let's get in it.
You're a lawyer.
Yep.
I know that because, you handle some stuff for me as well. But why, please tell the audience why lawyers cost $1 million an hour for anything.
So just to kind of give a little context, I graduated from law school in 2013. I went to work for a law firm called Vincent and Elkins. And, I think when I first started my billable rate, and when I tell you first started, like I didn't know anything. Law school doesn't teach you how to really be a lawyer. Teaches you how to think, but that's a separate consideration. And I think my billable rate at that time was like somewhere in the neighborhood of like $400 to $450 an hour.
So, okay, let's stop there. $400 an hour. I'm just doing simple math. I know that $100 an hour times 40 hours a week times 52 weeks is $208,000 a year. Just throwing that out there for everybody. Okay, continue.
Look, trust, I didn't get all the money involved, and you certainly weren't on 40-hour work weeks. But it's, now that I've been in private practice for about, 3 years now, there's not really an easy explanation other than, all of the sweat, the energy it takes to be able to learn this profession and do it well at a high level. Just like anybody else that's contributing to the deal, need to be compensated for what you can bring to the table. And that's something that I always keep in mind, of that, I'm on the clock, I'm being paid for this. Like, I need to bring actual value to this client, the same way that a broker would in an M&A transaction, or the marketing team, is that, I have to contribute, to this deal, but, at the end of the day, I have to be compensated for my efforts too.
Right. Compensated you will be, for sure. So, I've done business with your father as well too, and I'll let you kind of tell the background of that story. But you transitioned from being a lawyer to starting Holly Hall Supply Company. Can you walk the audience through, your journey from seeing your father kind of build his dermatology business to, kind of where we are today, or maybe not where we are today, but starting your company and kind of jumping in full time?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of years, but it's really just a few different phases. Phase one is really, almost starting at, for as long as I can remember, my dad has had his own skincare company. In the beginning, that wasn't, that was just making products and selling them to his patients because he couldn't find anything else that worked. And he's always, kind of had that inventor mind. And, so I came up in that business. I, did everything from washing windows to filling bottles in the back with a foot pump. So, really just saw every aspect of that business throughout my life. Fast forward to college. I wanted to go to law school, but wanted to take a year off, and had planned initially stay and work in DC. I went to Georgetown, and I ended up needing knee surgery. I had a football injury my senior year of college and had to come home. And while, resting and recovering, I think he saw an opportunity for free labor, started emailing me things that he wanted me to look over. I took an interest in it and worked for him for a year. Then, of course, went to law school, and, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do when I, went to law school. And, this doesn't sound the best, but really once I saw how much some of these big law firms were paying, I was like, I'm doing that. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know what that requires. I don't know what, what you need to do, but I want to do that.
Right.
And so I did that. And I practiced for about 4 years in Houston and did a 6-month rotation in New York City, doing mergers and acquisitions, capital markets, and private equity and shareholder activism. It was a career I liked. I did get a lot of satisfaction on working on deals, working with some, really smart people, but, I just didn't really feel the drive that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
You weren't passionate about it. You felt like you were just making, decent money, or maybe a lot of money. You don't have to, disclose information, but
Somewhere in between those two.
Yeah, just making money, but like, it wasn't kind of feeding your soul.
Yeah, it wasn't feeding my soul. You hit the head, on that one. It didn't feel sustainable. I could certainly do it for a while to, see the bank account grow a little bit and get out of the red. But it wasn't something I could see myself going through all of what's necessary in order to climb that ladder to make it to the next level and continue on that journey. So, I'd always had somewhat of an entrepreneurial mind. Like, my mom never lets me forget that I got in trouble in elementary school for selling my lunch.
Oh, wow.
So I feel like I've always had somewhat of a hustler's mentality, and really just saw it, when I, kind of made my decision that I wanted to start my own business. I thought it just made the most sense to focus on an industry that I already knew, that I had always been around my whole life. And if you're starting a skincare company, it doesn't hurt that your dad and your older brother are dermatologists.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now your father,
Mm-hmm.
is he still a part of your business, or is it like two separate companies? Like his business and yours? Like, I know that, it's kind of like, not only want to say a gray area, but he has some, I don't want to say so. I'll let you sell it. Like, is he a part, like, what's his capacity in regards to Holly Hall besides making
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So he has his independent business, which still
Okay.
operates, still functions. He has employees, operations, all of that. And when I started Holly Hall, I decided to, obviously reach out to the person I know who has the most experience in that department.
Right.
And, one, just to see what he thought about it. And he was all for it, and, willingly offered up his help to get me started. And I gave him a chunk of equity to, give him some skin in the game. So on a day-to-day basis, he's, more primarily focused on his practice and his business. But, as far as product development goes, that all starts with, bringing ideas to him, what I'm looking to accomplish, and then we go from there.
Yeah. Now, the field of skincare, especially on social media, seems crowded from an outsider's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And, now more importantly, like us being friends, wanted to support your business, but also the products work fantastically well. So I've canceled other subscription businesses or subscription skincare products and fully on, with the monthly subscription with Holly Hall. What's the process of creating formulas, and do those formulas work well for melanated people, or are they only for melanated people? Like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. So you're right. Skincare is a crowded field. That's not something I hide or run from, but it's one of those fields where it's literally applicable to every single human being alive. Now, whether they have the resources or the knowledge or the desire to really want to, invest in taking care of their skin, that's a different question. So it is a very crowded space, but there's still so many people that, and this is kind of one of my catchphrases I've fallen in love with, is that, there's so many people that are still washing their face with soap made for their butt. So just at a basic level, there's still
I like
so
that.
many people, so many people that have not, learned that there's a better way to do things. So, I still see an opportunity there. As far as the process, I was lucky enough to, develop and also inherit some relationships. So for instance, when we first started, I went to my dad and I said, hey, these are the products that I want to start with. He kind of came up with some ingredients that he thought would help accomplish that. Then we looped in the manufacturer, who's actually going to be in charge of formulating while we basically use trial and error as to what we get to with the final product. And it's just a lot of back and forth. And what I tried to do in that process was represent the customer who's not a chemist, who's not a dermatologist, as the middleman to, what the user experience should be like. Yep. So, it's, I think it worked really well, science being represented, medicine being represented, as well as the user experience of an average Joe.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. I've probably used, I can't even really recall, probably 5 to 10 products over the last decade. And You've been in business now 3 years, maybe?
Yep, 2017. So November will make 3 full years.
So I was gonna say, like, I've been using you guys, for however long that time has been. So I thought it was about 3 years. So yeah, like, once you find a skincare product or deodorant or some kind of consumable product that works, you tend to just stick to that. What makes, subscription-based businesses a challenge in today's market, especially in the direct-to-consumer capacity? Because I feel like the barriers to entry are really low, especially with things like Shopify and some of these platforms that you can kind of just upload a Squarespace site or, have a consultation with the Zoom, if somebody needed to get a tutorial or something like that. Like, so how do you differentiate yourself from Holly Hall versus some of the other many competitors out in the market?
So I think you're right in some respects in terms of people will, stick with what they know. And, that's really a tenet of the subscription-based business, is that you introduce them to the product, you get them to love it, and you incentivize them to continue using your product. So, on one hand, that means continuing to deliver a quality product. On the, second hand, it's about having good communication skills where, people feel that, like, they're not forgotten about because they're a subscriber. So, like, one of the things I always try to keep in my head is, don't treat people like the cable company treats you after they signed you. Of it, like, no deals apply to you anymore. There's no specials. It's all about the new guy. Don't worry about this, the one we already have on the hook. And one of the kind of, principles of the subscription-based Bible is that it's a lot cheaper to keep that existing client that you have than to go out and get a new one to replace them.
Those customer acquisition costs.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that's an important part of it. And I think 3 is just making it as, accessible and easy as possible, where people don't feel like too much product is being thrown at them and they have no power to stop it. So that was very important because initially we didn't offer a subscription-based model, which was a mistake in hindsight, but we worked through it.
Why was it a mistake?
It was a mistake just because I think it was an opportunity lost in the beginning that took a lot more work to educate and fix on the back end. Okay. Once so they had some very regular customers of ours that were coming and purchasing on a very regular basis, but weren't necessarily in tune or reading the newsletters and that sort of thing. So they didn't know that it was an option. Yep. And when you have someone who's been buying from you for a year and they make the complaint like, man, I just wish that y'all had a subscription and it would be automatic. And it's like, we've had a subscription for about 6 months, but that's on me, not on you, because I should have made that as part of the original pitch.
Yep. Yeah, no, it makes sense. So is Holly Hall specifically for African-American people or people of color, or is it really a product that anybody can use and benefit from?
So we like to say, if you have skin, then we're for you. So it's for all races, colors, men, women. It's, and that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we, address in the product development process. So we had men and women of all races try it out and, give, really important feedback in that development process. Yep. One of the concerns we also wanted to be very aware of is that a lot of the times Black skin can be, or those with more melanin or pigment can be left out of those considerations. And that's something that we certainly didn't want to get lost in our process. So we're for Black people, we're for white people, we're for everyone who has skin.
Yeah,
regardless
yeah.
of how much melanin you may or may not have.
Your total addressable market is pretty massive, man.
I would say so. I would say so. We try to target a little more refined than that, but
Yeah.
there's at least the potential for all of that.
Yeah. So walk us through the pricing structure without giving away your trade secrets. I just want
Mhm.
to so Outsized Returns, the podcast is centered around real estate investors or
Okay.
real estate investors, startups, and entrepreneurs. And I want people to take away, if they have an idea for a subscription-based business, it's my belief that, whatever you set your prices at in the beginning will definitely change. I think you already kind of addressed that by not implementing a subscription model in the
Hmm.
beginning. But you started out with 3 products. You
Correct.
now have maybe what, 8? Uh,
If you count the various sizing, we're somewhere in that
okay.
area. Yeah.
So tell me how you came up with your pricing model in the beginning, without telling any
Sure, sure,
trade
sure.
secrets, but
Look, I'm still
also
a lawyer. I'm not going to give you anything I don't want to. I know how to plead the fifth.
yeah, but and how that's kind of changed from year 1 to year 3.
Yeah, so there's a lot of attempts of making pricing products science, and I think the more traditional method was just that of that. Hey, here's my costs. I want to get 3x return on each sale.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the newer school of thought is more so of really pricing it where it's going to provide the most value to the customer. And that can mean a lot of different things based on who your customer is.
Right.
And the way that we initially started was really just looking at the competitive landscape. So made a list of probably about 30 to 40 companies that I wouldn't, direct competitor isn't necessarily an appropriate description, but they were a brand that we wanted to be in a similar space.
Okay, so you
That
didn't
they
just
had a
walk
very
down like aisle 8 in Walgreens or something like
no, no,
that. But
not that
okay,
simple. I won't
yeah,
pretend I didn't walk down Walgreens and Target aisles and Sephora
yeah,
aisles. So I walked down all those aisles, but that
yeah,
wasn't the only process.
yeah.
And really just kind of did a survey of, the brands that we would like to model ourselves after, whether
Mm-hmm.
that be their target, demographic, or the type of stores that carry their product.
Mm-hmm.
And really just wanted to make sure that we would be in the right, I guess, positioning as far as what that group is.
Right.
And that put us within a range of somewhere around like 16 to $24 on average per product.
Okay.
So that was just kind of we want to be in the same decision set as the brands that we want to be on, their level.
Yeah.
And from there, it's just a matter of, looking at what ingredients that you're putting in it, because obviously that's going to drive your cost.
Mm-hmm.
And then, allowing enough wiggle room for if you do get into retail sales, obviously you're going to have to give up some margin. So,
Are
you're
you
going
are
to have
you
to
are you in
provide for
retail?
that.
You don't have physical storefronts.
Not Holly Hall branded, but we're
Okay.
in about 11 brick and mortar independent stores
Okay.
throughout Houston area, and also one in Brenham.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, whenever you do that, the retail model obviously is different than the subscription and the direct a la carte online.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something you also need to account for. And also we do free shipping on our website.
Okay.
So, that's obviously something that we have to factor in. It doesn't drive the price that we have, but, we certainly can't run a business if shipping is bankrupting us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, shipping is one factor that a lot of people probably would just defer to the consumer. And so there's a balancing act. Like, I could pay for shipping. Will that help accelerate my cost versus, letting the consumer pay for shipping and just lowering the price of the product and letting them
Mhm.
see it on the back end? It could be the same thing. And you kind of have to make a decision on which way you kind of want to go. You're going to upset
Yeah, it's a
either.
mind game. It's a mind game.
Yeah.
And you just have to decide, out of your target demographic, what are people going to be more motivated by?
Yeah.
The potential sticker shock, or the fact that they have to pay for shipping.
Yeah.
I think for us, that's been something that's resounded really well with our customers,
Hmm.
is that shipping is free. especially with the subscription model, because people don't feel like they're at a loss for not buying it in bunches. And that was something that a lot of customers were doing in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
buying product in bulk, which
Yep.
sounds great, and it is great, especially when the order comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But the only issue with that is that if you have a customer that doesn't need to come back for 6 to 7 months, then you're not going to be on their radar. So if you want to launch a new promotion, you want to launch a new product, they're kind of tuning you out
Right.
until it's time to come back, because that's just the relationship that you started. So
Right.
while we're certainly, if we have customers that prefer to stock up, we're all for it.
Right.
However, we love that customers get to stay engaged with us by coming back and seeing us periodically.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I know that you've worked with some big time brands, over the years. You've worked with WeWork, Bonobos. How did those partnerships come about, and what takeaways did it kind of have on your business from establishing those partnership brands and also, doing business with them?
Sure. I've been really blessed, really lucky to have relationships
Hmm.
that I was able to lever in order to get those opportunities. So I think it's probably not too much of a surprise to anyone listening that really all business is a relationship business to some extent.
Yep.
So, really it's finding a way in, impressing, or at least uh, creating, some sort of dialogue as to kind of a win-win sort of situation. And that's always my idea whenever I approach some of these brands like
Hmm.
WeWork, Bonobos, J. Crew, is, essentially this is what I think that we could do for you.
Hmm.
And having that, what we can do for you approach has done wonders for those types of relationships.
Yep.
And the reason why we seek them is really, the credentialing effect of, being associated, and people know that you've been vetted by, these larger brands
Right.
that have a lot more cachet than we do as a small company.
Hmm.
And then two, just the positive affiliation of that.
Hmm.
Oh, I saw that at WeWork.
Yep.
I hold WeWork in very high regard. I'm probably going to hold that product I saw there in pretty high regard as well.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're recording this beginning of June.
Mhm.
COVID-19 has kind of taken an effect on every business.
Right.
I would say a lot of brick and mortar businesses have been affected, especially retail centered. But that, unbeknownst to a lot of people, direct to consumer brands are kind of 50-50. I've ordered some things from China and they've come in regular fashion. I've
Mhm.
also ordered some things that, show that are still on the way, and they've been that way for 3 weeks in California, where companies have had to refund me 50% of the shipping cost and the
Uh-huh.
product, and I still have yet to receive those goods. So talk to the audience about how COVID has kind of affected your business and just kind of the supply chain issues that a lot of people have kind of had to experience.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a bit of a mixed bag. Was lucky that, we inventory wise that, we're confident that we already had enough to kind of last us through this cycle, fingers crossed. So there wasn't an immediate concern on what we're doing right now as far as inventory and supply chain. That could present a problem going forward. I was looking to do a test product and was actually unable to uh, buy the bottles in order to do it,
Mm-hmm.
because the manufacturer just sold out, because there was just this mad rush that everyone wanted to create a hand sanitizer company.
Yeah.
And it really caught, I think, the supply chains and everyone else, with regard to COVID, caught them off balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a concern that we have to think about going forward. Um, and yeah, I really, my heart goes out to everyone who was operating a brick and mortar. But what I was inspired by is that so many brick and mortar stores, and the ones in Houston, the ones I'm much more knowledgeable about, how versatile they were, and saying, okay, well, we do curbside, we're gonna
Yeah.
up our online offerings. And I think in that situation it's really easy to get down and just kind of say that the cards are stacked against you. But it was really impressive how some of those stores rallied, and a lot of them, fingers crossed, are making it through as things start to open back up. For my business, I had a lot of, speaking of some of those relationships that I've been able to acquire, we were going to really ramp up a lot of that in terms of our presence in those types of spaces. Obviously, that was nixed.
Yeah.
But, the same way that, everybody else has to figure out the best way they could, we really tried to focus on our online business. And which has been going pretty well, all things considered.
Yep.
We've increased our advertising at this point under the presumption that I think a lot of people are a little more tied to their social networks and to their cell phones and the internet than they were when they were, going clock in and out every day.
Yeah.
And we've seen some positive growth out of that. So it's, it's still we'll see, but, we're optimistic.
Yeah, absolutely. A part of being an entrepreneur is, being resilient. You got to have, there's times for, I read a lot of books, and I know we'll get into that as well too. I know we'll talk about, the book journey that you're on this year. It's the hard thing about hard things, one of the books that was on your to read list.
I read that one already.
Okay, I guess this is a good time to, so Ben Horowitz talks about being a wartime CEO, and
sure.
There's not a better time than a global pandemic to kind of be that wartime CEO. So
chaos is a ladder.
Yeah,
Littlefinger said it best.
Don't waste the crisis.
Sure.
Is what people are talking about right now. So yeah, it definitely makes sense. Wanted to kind of highlight some of the pros and cons about your entrepreneurship journey with this conversation. So what are some of the things that people need to kind of be aware of? I mean, like, have you had to deal with some terrible customer complaints? How did those, if so, how did those customer complaints kind of affect you? And kind of, can you share some of those stories about how you kind of recovered from it? Like the bad side, since we're talking about this global pandemic,
sure,
and, being in this dark space right now.
Yeah, I mean, the entrepreneurs are kind of edified in today's society, and while I think that can be a little bit overblown, like there is a lot that you go through, and a lot of the times people only tell you the bad parts after they're already a billionaire, and they don't sound so bad at that point.
Absolutely, and I want to highlight guys like you that are kind of still, I wouldn't say you're in your infancy, but like your baby is like
we're still a baby, we're a toddler.
You're a toddler, so you're just starting to crawl.
Getting past the terrible twos over here.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I haven't had any negative customer experiences. I think the more soul crushing is way too strong, but concerning or really that kind of shook my confidence in the beginning is that when you just run into brick wall after brick wall, in terms of whether it be one person who just gives you like a scathing review of the product, and it's one of those things of you can't you can't take it emotionally. Well, you can, but you need to get over it quick.
I mean, right. Yeah.
So and realize that, hey, that's just one person's opinion, and if you think you're going to have 100% approval rate, then like
forget about it.
Yeah, have fun with that.
Yeah.
But I think that serves as a greater point of you have to work past the emotional ups and downs of this business. And I think that's in any business where there's a potential for high growth, is that there's so many opportunities where you get a fish on the hook, and it just seems like this is going to open up and change the whole trajectory of your business, and then it falls flat for whatever reason. It's how do you process that? It's okay to be pissed for the day, it's okay to take the rest of the day off, but the next day, like, you better get on it, or you're going to keep backsliding.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, I haven't had, like I said, I haven't had any negative customer experiences, but I've had more no's and doors shut in my face than I care to count or remember.
But so that is, if I had to write a book about rejection, it would be the art of handling no, or something along those lines, because that those no's that you build up over time, it's just armor. I mean, if you're in sales, you got to get, all you need all you need is, 100 people to tell you no, or 99 people to tell you no, and then one yes. And then just
Right.
do that, 10,000 times, and you'll capture, your market.
Right.
Right. And, I think a lot of people, when you go on Instagram and you click entrepreneur, it's typically, somebody on the beach, with a laptop, or
Right.
somebody,
Yeah. I
somebody
wish.
in some scantily clad attire. And that is not the case
No, it's
for the
not.
entrepreneurs that I know,
No, I'm in a t-shirt and some basketball shorts sitting at my desk all
Yeah,
day.
absolutely, man.
I get out to make post office runs every
Yeah.
once in a while. Now it definitely is an over glorified life, and it's not for everybody. And a lot of times when people say it's not for everybody, they're saying it kind of with hey, some people aren't tough enough. It's not a matter of toughness. It's just more a matter of, is this the way that you want to do things?
Mhm.
For me, I enjoy the process of having a thought, or someone else providing a thought that I like, and borrowing it,
Mhm.
and seeing that to fruition, and having ownership of that process, and being responsible, win, lose, or draw, for what comes out on the other end.
Mhm.
That's something I personally enjoy. um, so it's, I don't think anyone who doesn't have that it should feel any pressure to get into it.
Mhm.
But if you do, just know that it does not look like what it looks like on Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely not. So, so you're reading 12 books this year, right? Or your goal at
That's
the
the
beginning,
goal. Yeah,
was
that's the
to
goal.
read
I'm on track so far.
was to read one book a month.
Right.
Um, Talk about some of your favorite books that have been applicable to your journey as an entrepreneur, and kind of either reshaped or redefined, this journey that you've been on. You can include these books, but, like, just give us 3 recommendations.
Yeah. So the thing is, I try to avoid reading books that are strictly about entrepreneurship and about
Mhm.
business. Um, Reason being that, if your business is the only thing that you're focusing on from like the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, like, that sounds sexy, but like it's enough to make you go crazy. Like, I got to the point where I wasn't sleeping on a regular basis, just because I was just completely consumed, by my business.
Yeah.
And funny enough, my, I guess you know journey or project was, really inspired by, I want to start my day with something that's mixing it up a little bit. I want to continue to learn
Mhm.
and read about things that I'm not dealing with on an everyday basis, because I started to feel like my world was closing in, that
Yeah.
I lived inside of this bubble. And you know I'm not gonna say I was driving myself crazy, but it just wasn't a healthy way to live life. But some of the books that I've read throughout this, I guess we're going on 6 months now. I'm on the sixth book, so I'm on schedule.
Mhm.
But the favorite I've read so far is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight.
Okay.
So Phil Knight, founder of Nike. And what I loved about that book, and like I said, this is somewhat consistent with the way that entrepreneurs share all of the hardship that they went through after they made it. Maybe Phil
Right.
was saying it the whole time. I don't know.
Right.
But to see that a brand like Nike that just seems perfect,
Yeah.
everything about it seems well crafted.
Right.
Everything, it doesn't seem like they made any wrong moves, not at least ones I can identify.
Yeah.
They even came out of that sweatshop scandal in the '90s smelling like roses.
Yeah.
That they were making mistakes in the beginning, and that a lot of the things that they are now were just happenstance. You
Mhm.
know, like the name of the company wasn't even initially Nike.
Yeah.
And they initially were importing and selling Japanese track shoes.
Yeah.
It's that you can start off with relatively humbled or beginnings or a lot of missteps, and it's still possible to turn into a brand like Nike.
Yeah.
um, that's probably the best, the favorite read. Another read that I really enjoyed was Born a Crime by Trevor Noah.
Mhm.
I don't know if you're a Daily Show watcher.
These are two books that I have yet to read, but I am a Daily Show watcher. I love Trevor Noah, man. His Netflix specials are phenomenal.
Yeah, they are. And what I liked about that was, one, it kind of provided a release from just thinking about business mind in particular. But this is a little bit of a weird thing about your favorite book, but because I've watched so many Daily Show episodes, I got to read it in his voice.
Yeah.
So that was something that I looked forward to working on, every morning. And I try to read a little bit every morning when I wake up before I start my day and look at my phone, because at that point, once I look at my phone, I can't control my day anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And a third, there's a guy named David Fagenbaum that I played football with at Georgetown. Didn't know him well. He was, I want to say, 2 years older than me, or 2 years. And he was diagnosed with a rare cancer, and he also was at the time in medical school. And it's just kind of a story of how he persevered through that experience and ended up actually working on the treatment that's keeping him alive right now.
Oh wow.
So to just it's a little selfish, but just to see if someone can persevere through something like that, like, I think I can handle a few no's and a bad sales week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's the name of that book?
Chasing My Cure.
Chasing My Cure. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a recommendation that I think I definitely need to put on my list. The other two have been on there. I just need to get to it. The problem is there's so many books. There's so many good books out there that are highly recommended. I mean, you can read one a week, and it's like,
right, and still not get to all the ones that you would have liked to.
Yeah.
And I started this process with really just crowdsourcing it the way that really only social media can do these days. Hey, I think I put an Instagram story of like, let me know what books you're reading and you think are worth reading, and I really literally just made a list. And sometimes I just pick one that I really want. Sometimes I crowdsource two options, one versus the other, and see which one, and have some fun with it that way. But I think it's broken up the singular focusedness of what my days used to be like. And I feel like I'm more mentally prepared to take on whatever the day has to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we wrap up, tell people where they can find you on social media, where they can find Holly Hall, and anything else you kind of want to tell the listeners. I think you covered, soup to nuts, man. Everything that guys need to kind of be aware of, whether they're building a direct-to-consumer brand or a consumer product in retail. Like, you covered a lot. So we thank you for, joining the podcast and, providing some insight, for your experience as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, definitely. So my personal Instagram is at jmo713. And just to kind of give people the full spiel of what Holly Hall is we're a Houston-based dermatologist developed skincare line. And we were developed with the aim of making skincare less intimidating and more accessible. And you can find us at hollyhallsupply.com. And also social media handles at Holly Hall Supply.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again, for joining the podcast. Absolutely, man.
Thank y'all for listening.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime.
Definitely.
All righty.